Mia adjusted the collar of her uniform, feeling a flutter of nervous excitement in her chest as she walked down the sleek, metallic hallways of Galaxon Academy. The hallways, lined with luminescent symbols and the occasional holographic display of the school's schedule, felt both foreign and familiar by now. She had been one of the first human students to be admitted to the Academy, a prestigious institution that only the brightest students from across the galaxy could attend. The hallways were often filled with voices speaking in languages she was still learning to decipher, students from planets she could barely pronounce, and customs that felt as strange to her as her own ways must have seemed to them. Today, Mia was particularly excited. It was the annual problem-solving Olympiad, a highly competitive event where students from every corner of the galaxy would compete in solving puzzles, riddles, and mental challenges. Mia had always been good at solving puzzles, and she was especially eager to prove herself here. Being a human, she had often sensed a subtle undercurrent of doubt and curiosity from her alien classmates. She was determined to show that humans could excel at intellectual challenges, just as much as any other species in the galaxy. As she entered the vast auditorium where the Olympiad was to be held, Mia took a moment to appreciate the space. The room was enormous, with high, arching ceilings that changed color depending on the planetary theme of the day. Today, the ceiling reflected the deep, velvety blue of the Eterian Nebula, filled with tiny specks of light that mimicked distant stars. Rows of chairs hovered slightly above the ground, positioned in circles around holographic tables where each participant would complete their tasks. Mia spotted her seat, marked with a soft, glowing symbol representing Earth, a small blue and green planet that looked so tiny compared to the holographic projections of the other planets in the Academy. She walked towards her table, passing by students from other species. Her eyes met those of a Tazurian, a tall, insectoid being with iridescent, glass-like eyes that shifted colors as it looked at her. Tazurians were known for their mathematical prowess, and the one who stared at her now was one of the Academy's brightest students. It gave a slight, respectful nod, which Mia returned. Further along, she noticed a group of Nyrans, small amphibious creatures with webbed fingers and large, round eyes, whispering and watching her with curiosity. Despite the diversity around her, Mia reminded herself that this was a competition, and she intended to give it her all. As she took her seat, a voice echoed through the auditorium. It was Principal Valexis, a towering figure whose translucent, crystalline skin reflected the ambient lights of the room. "Welcome, esteemed students of Galaxon Academy, to the problem-solving Olympiad," she announced, her voice resonating with an almost musical quality. "Today we gather to test the limits of our minds, to push the boundaries of logic, and to foster understanding among the diverse intellects of our galaxy." Mia felt a thrill run through her as she listened. This was her chance. She adjusted her tablet and readied herself. The challenge was divided into several rounds, each with increasing difficulty. Every student was connected to the central system, where puzzles and challenges would appear on their screens. They had to solve each one within a limited time frame to proceed to the next round. As the first challenge appeared, Mia's fingers flew over her tablet. It was a sequence puzzle, something she had practiced countless times before. Within seconds, she had solved it, pressing the submit button with a smile of satisfaction. As the rounds continued, the puzzles grew more complex. Patterns, riddles, spatial reasoning, they tested every corner of her mind, but she was up to the challenge. As the competition moved into the later rounds, Mia noticed that fewer students remained in the auditorium. One by one, participants who could not keep up with the pace were eliminated, and their holographic tables dimmed as they quietly exited the room. She was among the few who had made it this far, her determination only growing with each success. In the final round, Mia found herself alone with just two other students, a Lixian and a Revtar. The Lixian was an ethereal-looking being with 4 arms and a head surrounded by floating rings of energy. Known for their unparalleled pattern recognition, Lixians were respected across the galaxy for their logical minds. The Revtar, on the other hand, was a massive creature with a hardened exoskeleton, its movements slow and deliberate. But Mia knew not to underestimate it. Revtars possessed incredible memory and concentration. The final challenge appeared on Mia's screen. It was an intricate three-dimensional puzzle that required the solver to rotate and assemble various abstract shapes into a single form. The puzzle had layers that shifted unpredictably, making it difficult to grasp. Mia quickly analyzed the pieces, her mind working faster than ever before. She visualized the solution in her head, a skill she had honed back on Earth. Within seconds, she moved her fingers in swift, decisive motions, assembling the pieces with astonishing speed. When she pressed the submit button, the auditorium fell silent. Mia looked up, realizing she was the first to complete the puzzle. The Lixian and the Revtar were still struggling with their screens, their expressions, or the equivalent of expressions in their species, showing signs of intense concentration. Principal Valexis's voice echoed again. Congratulations to Mia of Earth for completing the final challenge in record time. Her tone held a note of astonishment, which did not go unnoticed by the other students still observing the competition. But as the applause began, Mia noticed a few disapproving murmurs among the spectators. A group of council members, senior students and faculty who monitored competitions, were huddled together, their expressions stern. She caught snippets of their whispered conversation, words like impossible and unnatural floating through the air. Mia's heart sank as she realized that her victory might not be as celebrated as she had hoped. The applause faded as one of the council members, Professor Archie, stepped forward. He was a formidable figure, his dark, elongated form casting a shadow over the room. His piercing, multifaceted eyes reflected a skeptical gaze as he looked at Mia. Mia of Earth, he began in a cold, analytical tone. We must review your performance. The speed at which you completed these challenges raises certain concerns. Such accuracy and timing are highly unusual, even among the most seasoned students. Mia felt a surge of frustration but kept her composure. I've practiced for this, Professor, she replied, trying to hide the tremor in her voice. I didn't cheat. I just used the skills I've developed. But Professor Ark did not seem convinced. We will conduct a thorough investigation, he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. Until then, you are suspended from all academy activities, effective immediately. The words struck Mia like a blow. Suspended? She had done nothing wrong, yet here she was, being punished simply for excelling. She looked around, hoping for support, but the council members only watched her with disapproving eyes. Her classmates shifted uncomfortably, a few of them casting sympathetic glances, but no one dared to speak up. As Mia was escorted out of the auditorium, a heavy silence followed her. She felt the weight of judgment pressing down, the pride she'd felt in her abilities replaced by a profound sense of isolation. She had come here to prove herself, to show that humans could stand alongside the brightest minds in the galaxy. But now it seemed that her success had only served to deepen the suspicion around her. As she walked through the empty hallways back to her dormitory, Mia's mind raced. Why were they so quick to doubt her? Did they truly believe she was incapable of achieving this on her own? The frustration gnawed at her, but beneath it all was a spark of determination. If they wanted proof of her abilities, she would find a way to give it to them. She would clear her name, no matter the cost. Mia knew that this was only the beginning of a long and difficult journey. The council might see her as an outsider, someone who didn't belong, but she was determined to change that. Mia sat alone in her dimly lit dormitory, her mind racing as she tried to process what had happened. It had been just hours since her victory at the problem-solving Olympiad, yet instead of celebrating, she found herself facing a suspension. The sense of pride and joy she'd felt moments after completing the final puzzle had been quickly replaced by disbelief and frustration. She replayed the council's words in her mind, each phrase sharp and cutting, a reminder of the suspicion they harbored toward her. With a sigh, she looked around her room. The small space, which had once felt cozy and familiar, now felt stifling and alien. Her belongings, a few trinkets from Earth, photos of her family, and some study materials seemed trivial compared to the storm brewing outside her door. Despite the Academy's impressive reputation, Mia knew that being one of the first humans admitted to Galaxon Academy came with unique challenges. Still, she hadn't expected that excelling would make her a target for suspicion. As she sat in silence, her tablet buzzed, breaking her thoughts. The screen displayed a message from Kale, one of her closest friends at the Academy. Kale was a Larai, a slender, amphibious alien with iridescent skin that shimmered in the light. She'd met him during her first week at the Academy, and he had always been one of the few who treated her without judgment. He was fiercely intelligent, but, unlike many of the other students, genuinely curious about Earth's customs and culture. The message read, "Mia, I heard what happened. I'm so sorry. I don't believe for a second that you cheated. Are you okay?" Mia's heart warmed slightly at his words. She quickly typed back, "Thanks, Kale. I'm coping. I didn't think they'd actually suspend me just because I finished fast. It feels so unfair." After a brief pause, Kale replied, "Meet me in the library. I think we need to look into this. There has to be a reason they're reacting this way." Intrigued and grateful for his support, Mia left her dormitory and made her way to the Academy's central library. The halls were mostly empty at this hour, casting long shadows in the faint, blue-tinted glow of the Academy's lighting. The library itself was an architectural marvel, a vast, domed room filled with rows of shelves that seemed to stretch infinitely, holding knowledge from every corner of the galaxy. Holographic displays floated in the air, showing scrolling texts and images from various alien civilizations. Kale was waiting for her near the central console, a large interactive hologram that students used to access the Academy's extensive database. When he saw her, he gave a reassuring nod, his large, expressive eyes showing genuine concern. "I've been doing some research," he said quietly, gesturing for her to sit beside him. "There's a history here that I think you need to know about." Mia sat down, watching as Kale pulled up several documents on the holographic console. The documents displayed historical records, council meeting notes, and scientific journals from different eras in the Academy's history. Kale highlighted a particular document from decades ago, titled "The Limits of Human Cognition and Analysis." This study, Kale explained, pointing to the title, was conducted before humans had even set foot in the Academy. It claimed that humans, due to their limited neural capacities compared to most galactic species, would likely never achieve certain intellectual milestones. Mia frowned, reading the words. "They think humans are limited? Just because we're different?" Kale nodded. "Many species here have specialized abilities that humans lack, like telepathy, enhanced perception, or extended cognitive bandwidth. But they don't understand that humans have unique problem-solving skills like intuition and pattern recognition that don't rely on those abilities." Mia's mind spun as she absorbed this new information. She'd never considered that her natural talents might be seen as suspicious simply because they didn't align with the galaxy's norms. "So because I don't solve problems the same way they do, they think I must be cheating?" "Exactly," Kale replied. "But it's more than that. Some council members, especially Professor Archie, are deeply conservative. They believe that any deviation from their established methods is unnatural. To them, your success is an anomaly that challenges their preconceptions." Mia clenched her fists, anger rising within her. "That's unfair. I worked hard for this. Just because I'm different doesn't mean I don't deserve to be here." Kale placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "I know, and that's why we're going to prove them wrong. If we can find evidence of how human cognition works differently, something that can explain why you excel at these puzzles, we might be able to convince them." Determined, Mia nodded. "Let's do it." For the next several hours, they pored over scientific journals and studies on human cognitive processes. Kale helped her access records from Earth's academic institutions, showing studies on human problem-solving techniques, instinctual responses, and cognitive flexibility. The more they read, the clearer it became humans had evolved in a harsh, unpredictable environment that had required them to make rapid decisions, adapt quickly, and solve problems with limited resources. These traits, though not superior to the abilities of other species, were unique and valuable in their own right. Finally, Kale stumbled upon a piece of information that made him pause. "Mia, look at this," he said, pulling up a study on neuroplasticity in humans. "It says here that human brains are highly adaptable, able to restructure themselves in response to new information. That's rare among most species here." Mia read the study, her heart racing. "So my brain is literally wired to adapt quickly to new challenges?" Kale nodded. "Exactly. This could be why you excel at complex puzzles. You're not cheating, you're simply using your brain's natural flexibility to find solutions faster." Armed with this new knowledge, Mia felt a renewed sense of hope. If they could present this information to the council, they might be able to clear her name. But before they could discuss their next steps, they were interrupted by a stern voice from behind. "What are you two doing here?" They turned to see Professor Archie standing in the doorway, his dark, imposing figure casting a shadow over the library. His multifaceted eyes glinted with suspicion as he approached them. "Researching, Professor," Mia replied, forcing herself to remain calm. "I'm trying to understand why my abilities are being questioned." Professor Ark's expression hardened. "You are not allowed access to Academy resources during your suspension, Mia. Your actions are only deepening the Council's concerns." Mia took a deep breath, trying to keep her frustration in check. "Professor, I'm not trying to defy the Council. I just want to prove that I didn't cheat. Kale and I found studies that show humans have unique cognitive traits. Our brains work differently, which is why I was able to solve the puzzles quickly." But Professor Archie didn't seem interested. "The Council has already reached its conclusion, Mia. Your actions are highly irregular, and your defiance only further proves that you lack respect for our traditions." Kale stepped forward, his voice firm but respectful. "With all due respect, Professor Archie, the Academy is supposed to be a place of learning and understanding. How can we foster understanding if we reject those who think differently?" The professor's gaze shifted to Kale, his expression unreadable. "The Academy welcomes diversity within certain boundaries, Kale. But we cannot allow disruptive elements to undermine our principles." With that, Professor Archie turned and left the library, leaving Mia and Kale in tense silence. Mia felt a pang of despair, wondering if their efforts had been in vain. But Kale, sensing her distress, placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. "Don't give up, Mia. There's always a way." Mia looked at him, her determination reigniting. "Then we'll find it." The next day, Mia found herself summoned to a private hearing with the council. She and Kale had worked late into the night, gathering their evidence, preparing their arguments, and hoping to appeal to the council's sense of fairness. As she entered the council chamber, she felt a mix of nervousness and resolve. The council members sat in a semicircle, their expressions unreadable, as they regarded her with a mixture of skepticism and curiosity. Principal Valexis, who had announced her victory just a day earlier, now wore a stern expression as she gestured for Mia to speak. "Mia, you requested this hearing to present evidence in your defense. We are listening." Mia took a deep breath and began to explain. She outlined the findings she and Kale had uncovered, describing how human cognitive abilities differed from those of other species. She highlighted studies on neuroplasticity, instinctual problem-solving, and adaptability, emphasizing that these traits were a natural part of being human, not evidence of cheating. As she spoke, she noticed some council members exchange thoughtful glances. A few appeared skeptical, but others seemed intrigued. When she finished, a moment of silence hung in the air before one of the council members. A soft-spoken yet respected figure named Dr. Ryle spoke up. "Mia's evidence is compelling," Dr. Ryle said, addressing the other council members. "Perhaps we should consider that her abilities are simply different, not deceptive." Professor Archie, however, was not convinced. He leaned forward, his voice cold and dismissive. Different or not, her actions disrupted our proceedings and challenged our values. We cannot allow exceptions to our standards. But Dr. Rill persisted. Professor Archie, our mission is to foster understanding across species. If we cannot accept differences, then we are failing in that mission. As the council debated, Mia felt her heart pounding. Her fate hung in the balance, and she knew that much more than her academic standing was at stake. This was about respect, about her right to be here, and about proving that she and other humans deserved a place in this galactic community. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Principal Valexis raised her hand, signaling for silence. She turned to Mia, her expression unreadable. Mia of Earth, we will consider your evidence and make our decision tomorrow. Until then, you are to remain in your dormitory. Mia nodded, feeling a mixture of relief and anxiety. As she left the chamber, Kale was waiting for her outside. He gave her an encouraging smile, but she could see the concern in his eyes. They listened to you, Mia. That's already a victory, he said softly. Mia smiled, grateful for his support. I just hope it's enough. As she returned to her dormitory that evening, Mia couldn't shake the feeling that her struggle represented something larger than herself. This was about acceptance, understanding, and the courage to challenge biases. She resolved that, no matter what the council decided, she would continue to stand up for herself and for all those who, like her, sought a place in this vast, diverse galaxy. Mia spent a restless night in her dormitory, her mind replaying the tense hearing before the council. She felt the weight of uncertainty pressing on her, knowing that the council's decision would not only impact her own future but could also set a precedent for how other humans and perhaps students from any minority background would be treated at the Academy. As the first human to stand trial before the Academy Council for a so-called anomaly, Mia understood the responsibility that had been placed on her shoulders. The morning finally came, bringing with it a mix of anticipation and anxiety. She barely touched the breakfast that was sent to her room, her thoughts solely focused on the council's decision. She glanced at her tablet, hoping to see a message from Kale. He had been her unwavering supporter throughout this ordeal, and she found herself wishing he could stand by her side in the council chamber. At last, her tablet chimed with a message, but it wasn't from Kale. It was a formal notice from Principal Valexis, informing her that the council had reached a decision and instructing her to appear in the council chamber immediately. Steeling herself, Mia took a deep breath and left her dormitory. The corridors were unusually quiet, as if the entire academy held its breath alongside her. As she walked, she passed a few students who cast uncertain glances in her direction, whispering among themselves. Some looked at her with sympathy, while others with distrust. But Mia kept her gaze forward, refusing to be swayed by the judgment of others. When she arrived at the council chamber, she found the council members already assembled, their faces a mixture of somberness and curiosity. Principal Valexis sat at the center, her crystalline skin reflecting the faint ambient light. To her right sat Professor Archie, who watched Mia with his cold, calculating gaze, his posture rigid and unyielding. On the left was Dr. Rull, the council member who had shown understanding during the hearing. She offered Mia a small, encouraging nod, and Mia felt a flicker of hope rise within her. "Please take your place, Mia," Principal Valexis said, gesturing to the podium in the center of the chamber. Mia stepped forward, her heart pounding. The silence was thick as she stood, waiting for the council to speak. Principal Valexis cleared her throat, her expression carefully neutral. "After careful deliberation, the council has reached a decision regarding the allegations against you, Mia of Earth. We have reviewed the evidence you presented, as well as the testimonies of your classmates and faculty." Mia held her breath, watching as Principal Valexis paused. The principal's gaze softened slightly as she continued. "Mia, your achievements in the problem-solving Olympiad were indeed unprecedented. Your abilities have raised questions within the council and among the faculty, as they are unlike those of any other species we have encountered in the Academy. However, after reviewing the information you provided regarding human cognitive adaptability, the Council has concluded that your success was not a result of deception or manipulation. Rather, it appears that your human abilities are unique, shaped by the specific evolutionary challenges of your species. Mia's heart leaped with hope, but she held her composure, waiting for the full verdict. Dr. Rill leaned forward, speaking with a warm, respectful tone. We acknowledge that your cognitive skills, particularly your brain's neuroplasticity and pattern recognition, are legitimate adaptations rather than a form of dishonesty. Your achievements demonstrate a diversity of thinking that we believe enriches our academy. In light of this, we have decided to lift your suspension and restore your academic privileges. A wave of relief washed over Mia, and she felt a tear prick at the corner of her eye. She was about to thank the Council, but Professor Ark's cold voice interrupted. While your actions were ultimately deemed honest, we cannot ignore the disruption they caused to the Academy's order, he said, his tone sharp. To ensure that no such incident occurs in the future, we are implementing new guidelines regarding problem-solving competitions. All competitors must adhere to standardized methods, and any deviation will be grounds for immediate disqualification. Mia felt a pang of anger at Professor Arky's rigid stance, but she managed to keep her expression calm. She could see that he remained determined to control how students excelled, wanting to impose limitations that discouraged innovation. Dr. Rell, however, raised an objection. With respect, Professor Arky, these guidelines risk suppressing the very diversity of thought that we are here to encourage. Mia's methods are unconventional to us, yes, but they represent a valid form of problem-solving that could teach us all something new. Professor Arky's expression hardened, and Mia could sense the underlying resistance between the Council members. It was clear that while some were willing to embrace diversity, others clung to tradition, unwilling to adapt to change. Principal Valexis raised a hand, silencing the debate. "Let us not undermine our purpose here," she said firmly. "Our role is to foster growth and understanding. Therefore, Mia's methods will not be restricted. In fact, her success will be studied to see how alternative problem-solving approaches can be integrated into our curriculum." The Council murmured in agreement, and Mia felt a swell of pride. Not only had she proven her innocence, but her experience would now influence the Academy's teachings, opening doors for future students who might bring their own unique skills. As the meeting concluded, Principal Valexis offered Mia a respectful nod. "Mia of Earth, you are dismissed. We look forward to seeing you continue your studies here with us." Mia bowed slightly, her voice thick with gratitude. "Thank you, Principal Valexis. Thank you, Council members. I promise I'll honor this opportunity." With a final nod, she turned and left the chamber, feeling lighter than she had in days. She walked through the corridors, her head held high, her heart brimming with a renewed sense of purpose. As she made her way to the library, she felt a presence by her side. It was Kale. "Mia," he called out, jogging up to her with a bright smile. "I just heard, you did it, you proved them wrong." Mia grinned, feeling her heart swell with gratitude for her friend's unwavering support. "I couldn't have done it without you, Kale. You helped me find the courage to stand up for myself, even when it felt like the whole galaxy was against me." Kale laughed, his iridescent skin shimmering under the lights. "Well, it looks like we taught the Council a thing or two about humans. I think they'll be a bit more open-minded from now on." They walked together, sharing a comfortable silence as they reflected on the journey they had been through. Mia knew that her experiences had changed her, making her stronger and more resilient. She was no longer just the human trying to fit into an alien academy. She was now a voice for diversity, a symbol of resilience, and a reminder that even the most established traditions could be challenged. In the weeks that followed, Mia returned to her studies with a renewed sense of confidence. She noticed that her classmates began to approach her with questions, curiosity replacing the initial suspicion they had shown. Some of them wanted to learn more about human problem-solving methods, intrigued by the unique ways in which her mind worked. One day, while studying in the library, she received a message on her tablet. It was from Principal Valexis, inviting her to participate in a new committee. The Academy was forming a committee dedicated to exploring and integrating alternative methods of learning and problem-solving across species. As Mia read the message, she realized that her experience had sparked a movement within the Academy. By standing up for herself, she had opened a door for others who might bring their own unconventional skills and perspectives. She felt a deep sense of accomplishment, knowing that she had made a meaningful impact on a place she had once felt so alien. Kale, who had been watching her read the message, raised an eyebrow. "So, what's next, Mia? Are you going to change the entire Academy now?" Mia smiled, feeling a surge of excitement. "Maybe I will, Kale. Maybe I will." In the months and years that followed, Mia's influence grew within Galaxon Academy. The committee she helped establish became a bridge between species, fostering collaboration and mutual understanding. Her story became a symbol of resilience, inspiring students of all backgrounds to embrace their differences and view diversity as a strength. Through her journey, Mia had learned one powerful truth: sometimes the greatest challenges weren't the ones posed by puzzles or competitions, but by the biases and expectations of others. And by challenging those biases, she had not only found her place in the galaxy, but had also helped shape a future where every student, no matter where they came from, could feel at home.